Aloha friends, it's Robert Selleck with Blue Planet Surf. In today's video I'm going to talk about plate mounts like this Axis plate mount right here and Tuttle mounts like this Mike's Lab mast that slides right into the Tuttle mount into the board. So I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of either system, and I'm going to tell you why Mike's Lab is still using the Tuttle mount even though most foils are now using plate mounts. Obviously the big difference is that you can adjust it, so you can loosen up the 4 screws and slide the mast forward or backwards in the tracks, so you can easily adjust it for different foil systems, different size foils, different foot placements. It's a lot more adaptable to have an adjustable mast plate. For that reason, most companies now use plate mounts, and with the proper reinforcements, these can be very strong and very versatile, and they do have a little bit more drag, but at lower speeds it really doesn't matter much. The speeds that you have when you take off on the foil, it's pretty low speed, so it doesn't really matter much whether you're using a plate mount or Tuttle mount. But let's talk a little bit about the advantages of the Tuttle mount. Well, first of all, the disadvantage is that it's in one place, you can't move it. That's a big disadvantage. So if the box is not in the right place for the foil, you can always adjust your foot placement, but then if your weight is too far forward or too far back on the board for the volume distribution, that can be an issue. So it's not ideal to have it in just one place, but if the Tuttle box is well placed, then it's not too much of an issue, and you can adjust your foot straps or your foot placement slightly as needed. One big advantage of the Tuttle mount is that you have less drag. It doesn't really matter so much at takeoff speed, because takeoff speed is usually pretty slow, but sometimes when you come off foil at high speeds and touch down on the water at high speed, you can really notice the difference between the Tuttle mount and the plate mount. The plate mount just has a little bit more drag, and it's a little bit more sticky on the water because of that drag, because the drag slows you down and pushes the board down on the water. So if you're touching down at high speed, you have more of a braking effect. Than with the Tuttle mount, it just feels like it's much easier to pop back up because it maintains the speed, it has less drag, it just kind of pops right back off the surface. So that's one thing that I've noticed with the Tuttle mount. That's nice if you're like going on a fast downwinder, you're going like 25-30 knots or something, you touch down, it's much easier to pop it back up versus a plate mount. Or especially if you're using an adapter from Tuttle to plate adapter, that has even more drag. It's really noticeable, the amount of drag that you introduce. And then I see a lot of people also using those big screws, the hand screws on their plate mount. Once again, it's not a big deal if you're just using it at takeoff speeds, but if you do touch down with those big screws, they introduce a lot of extra drag, and to me, I don't want that extra drag. Another advantage of the Tuttle mount is that all the carbon fiber, the way that it's laid up in the mold, it goes straight down the mast and into the board, and basically then you have the screw connecting from the deck. Everything's connected solidly together, so the carbon fiber is going straight into the board. On a plate mount, the carbon fiber has to kind of come out into a flat surface, so you don't have the carbon fiber connecting directly into the board. So in this case, it's basically a little bit stronger and uses less material. To make this strong enough, you have to basically really reinforce the base of the mast and make it wider and add more material, so you're introducing a little bit more weight to the plate mount to make it strong enough. So those are basically the reasons why Mike's Lab is still using the Tuttle mount, even though almost everyone else has adapted to the plate mount, which is more convenient for sure, but there are definitely advantages to using the Tuttle mount. When you're installing a Tuttle mast into your board, you want it to fit really tight. Sometimes it's really hard to get that mast slid into the Tuttle box, so I like to apply a little bit of liquid soap on the Tuttle head. It just makes it slide in easier and comes out easier too later. And then I screw it really tight, the 2 screws. I push it in as far as I can, screw it tight, and then I kind of push on the nose a little bit kind of tap the nose on the ground a little bit and to make sure there's no play, and then tighten it again, and that helps it just keep it tight. If there's a little bit of looseness in the mast as you're using the board and pumping and so on, that screw can work itself out, slowly loosen up more, and then that just gives you a really sloppy kind of ride when the mast is able to tip back and forth a little bit in the box. To mount the plate mount, I like to use a driver. It just makes it easier than using hand tools, but of course you can use hand tools as well. It's good to put the screws in loose first and then tighten them once all the screws are in and pre-tightened, and then just make sure they're really tight as well. You don't want any looseness, because once you have a little bit of a wiggle, the screws can work themselves looser, and I've even heard of people losing their screws and so on. So you want to make sure you get a really nice tight connection there between the plate mount and the board. Now that I've used the Tuttle mount for a while, I really see the advantages. It's really nice to have that. A lot of our boards still have the foil strong box, so it combines a plate mount and a Tuttle mount in the same box. And of course, also if you want to retrofit a board, we have the foil strong box system available, and you can install it into any board. Really very strong because it has like a PVC box encased around everything. Everything's one-piece construction connected to the deck and the bottom of the board. So that's probably the most solid connection you can have for your mast into the board. Alright, so that's it. So those are some of the differences between the plate mount and the Tuttle mount. For most people, I definitely recommend the plate mount because it's so versatile, easy to use, easy to adjust. You can use it with different foils and so on. But if you're seriously into racing and speed and downwinding, definitely consider a Tuttle mount just for the high performance that you get out of it. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you liked it, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to the Blue Planet Surf YouTube channel, and we'll see you on the water. Aloha.